Good morning. It's Friday,
TGIF, thank God it's Friday. Or
right?
thank Goddess it's Friday. I don't care. So,
hmm
yeah. And
Welcome to the Friday
welcome,
Grief Chat.
welcome to Friday Grief Chat, Humor, Grace, and Grief. And I'm Deb. This is Jill. And what's on your heart today? That's what I say. Or not on your HART, but your HEART. So, Jill, what's been rolling around in your head this week about grief, or grief recovery, or some things you and I were just talking about, maybe some things we'd like to do in the future, or yeah,
All of it, right? I've seen people I see professionally making some leaps and bounds and others really trying to figure out what they can give themselves permission to do. Spent this morning talking with someone who's not a client who's trying to support someone who's just had a very sudden, very um, young loss, like 20s to 30s loss. Um, it's also birthday week for my sister and me. Happy birthday, Gail. It is her birthday today.
and
Um,
is it your birthday? When's your
my
birthday?
birthday is 5 days later. She arrived early to forever force me to share birthdays with her.
Oh, eh, what is the date of your birthday? May
The
what?
21st. Yeah,
Say again.
21st.
The 21st. Oh,
Yeah.
that's
So
in 4 days.
yeah,
Wow.
so I'm taking part of today to make sure that I have time to run her some lunch because she's teaching today and it's testing week in our local schools, which
Oh
every teacher
yeah.
dreads, as far as I know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's that whole all the firsts, but supporting other people, but letting yourself have all the feels. And so I've been doing a lot of gardening and a lot of being outside with my plants and
Mm-hmm.
talking to my tomatoes, which as a result are now growing, 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 growing. And I
I
love
love
that.
it. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, all the things. How about you?
I've had several things rolling around in my head this week. It truly was a really uh, hard Mother's Day. And so our pastor was speaking about, you know, imperfect mothers, but not really like they're not perfect, but more who is perfect. And talking about all sorts of stuff. And I could not stop my eyes from squirting. And, you know, forgiving myself for, I don't want to interrupt anything. So I, and for just not being able to make it through. I mean, how many of us mothers, want to put on a brave face? Or how many of us women, I'm just going to talk, or even fathers want to put on a brave face, and then you have to forgive yourself because you're not living up to your own expectations.
Absolutely. I actually skipped church on Mother's Day because I knew I was not going to make it through. So I
Right.
decided to not push and to let myself go take care of me the way that I thought I needed to.
You know, it wasn't Mother's Day, although I've talked about it this before, but I it was Easter after my mom died. And the thought of what is portrayed on Good Friday and then showing up. I mean, my mother wasn't resurrecting.
Right.
Besides, she was Jewish and she wasn't going to do that. But I'm glad I took the risk to take that day off many, many, many moons ago. And I watched Monty Python, The Life of Brian, which is as
Uh-huh.
close to a humorous Easter service that you can get.
hmm
And I sat up and I cried through my laughter and tears when they sang at the very end, when Jesus is crucified, or Brian is crucified. Always look on the bright side of life. Do-do-do-do. And giving yourself permission to, sometimes you have to give yourself permission for saying something harsh, and then you have to move on. Sometimes you have to give yourself permission to be harsh to yourself and say, that stops now. Sometimes you have to give yourself permission and, what's the word I want to say? For past mistakes, permission to forgive yourself,
Right.
even though you can't get those. You know what I mean? Like,
give yourself grace for stuff that's gone on, or you sit up in bed all night at 2 a.m. reworking everything you've ever said, every stupid thing you've ever said in a moment when you were in second grade, right? All the things. We don't need to do that.
Have you ever done that before?
Oh, have I ever? And I have to talk myself down and say, okay, nobody remembers that but me. Right? And if they do, that's on them.
Yeah,
right?
And even those that talk about forgiveness have to forgive.
Yes.
It's a tough pill to swallow for even yourself.
We can hold on to the stuff, and then even after someone's died, hold it against them and have it make our grief harder,
Right.
and make it more complicated and make it much harder to move into where we need to go, because we're so tied up in what that thing or that moment or that part of them. Or we can say we're all complicated human creatures, and we all have bits that we're not super proud of. And
Exactly.
that doesn't mean that they didn't love us or we didn't have a good relationship and that we don't miss them. We have those times. And it doesn't matter what the relationship is, whether it's a child, a parent, a spouse, a friend, a separation from a friend or a relative, as opposed to, a death of one. It doesn't matter. My Adele was wonderful, but I had to take her out and hold her up to go potty the last 2 months. Right?
I remember.
That's just. Do I hold it against her? No, I did that by choice. Right.
Right. And there's in grief, there's so many parts of yourself that, at least for me, that you break off in pieces sometimes. And whether it's your body in pieces. I told Daryl, I said, I sort of feel like this with my body. And I know you felt like this too. I hear the music in the background, and then I see this motion. Da 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 da, and you're spinning these plates in the air, trying to get your body to work, and you actually complicate it even more if you don't sort of just give in, and it's a grief having to juggle all these different body parts.
It is. All the changes our bodies make, and it doesn't matter if you're 18 and realizing that you couldn't do what you did when you were 10, or if it's that you're 80 and you're having to be grateful that you now have 2 new knees and 2 new hips, right? It is we have changes that we have to make in our lives over and over and over again, against our choice, against our will. And we can either fight them, or we can take them with us and find some laughter and grieve the loss.
I heard something. So I have to change a couple things, but I heard this from a friend this week, that someone said to them, and it's obviously a female friend that this was said to. You know, you would feel so much better if you had a breast reduction. I'll take care of you. Can I have your key?
What?
Yes, yes. And I said, wait a second, wait, I'm not sure I heard that correctly. And how people sometimes get the audacity to tell you what you should do, just like in any kind of grief, without looking at the whole person.
Right.
And everything else that I said, please, I will protect as many, and it doesn't matter if it's male or female that said that. The fact is, people are always going to tell you how to do something or not respect the way you've been doing it right for now.
That's the discussion I just had sitting in the backyard on the phone with someone who has a loved one who had a loss. And fortunately, they're in the same, they see life as we see life. And I said, one of the things to remind that person is they're going to do this their way. And so it may involve choices that other people aren't going to like. And they get to choose. So your role is to continue to send the funny memes, check in with them so they don't feel that vacuum after all the stuff is done, and to give them permission actively to do whatever it is, however they need to do this. And if that involves, adopting 17 stray dogs or turning their yard into a tropical jungle or dating again soon, whatever that is they need to do, that's their choice.
Exactly. And
other people will tell them, but they get to find the humor in being told and to do whatever it is they need to do that takes care of their needs.
Exactly. And I very bluntly and lovingly said to a friend that knew if she made the choice to move out of her parents' house, she was going to have a loss. But living there daily, she was experiencing a loss. So sorry. And so I said to her, I understand you are afraid to move out of your mom and dad's house. I am not going to support that fear. I just want you to know, I love you. I'm not supporting that fear. I am supporting you taking the risk. And, I was able to say that in a loving way. She could still choose to do that, but when she complained about it, I would just be silent. And you get to do that.
Yes.
And, if it's, I watched a Methodist pastor talk about sort of like the new rules in the Methodist church now, not new rules, but the acceptance of people in any case. And I behind him was the choir, and there were people that applauded him and there were people that were stone cold. So you can accept that. You don't have to agree with them. You can accept their silence. And, for them, I'm sure it was a loss. The people that wanted to be pick and choose out of the Bible, that was what it was about. You don't have to agree with someone, but you can accept them.
And show them support.
And until they cross over a line. And then you
Mhm.
can say ouch as loudly as you need to.
Right. You're
Yeah.
allowed to have your own space. And if
People don't.
someone's decisions don't fit for you, you don't have to stay in their space.
And that's the same in grief and loss, which is what I'm sort of getting to, that, you know, so and so is with their grief in a certain way, just like you were saying. Although
Hmm.
I don't think I've heard like getting dogs and cats. I've never heard turning your backyard into a jungle.
You
So
know, plant therapy is a big thing,
yes, I do.
right? I mean, I give me a credit card that I can spend on or an ATM card filled with money and
Retail
a chance
therapy,
to,
yes.
and I don't want to go to a store with all the lights and all the noise. I want to go to the nursery,
Yes.
right? And then
Yes.
I want to go out and pet
Yes.
my tomatoes.
You know,
And
I
that's my retail. I'm going to have so many baby tomatoes. It's amazing.
my next door neighbor. Oh, and we've called each other. I'm a, at one point I became a jewelry whore. I would do anything for jewelry, and she is a plant whore, and it's beautiful. And we called each other that, and that was our way with
Right.
dealing with certain things,
Right.
you know, and I
100%.
appreciate that.
I've had to grieve my poor zucchinis that I had in my plant boxes that something ate. But I did some therapy about that and I went and got some new ones and now they're living on my patio. So sometime this summer we'll be unable to walk on half of our patio because there will be vines everywhere and
Yeah,
I will just be the happiest camper. I will be careful about rattlesnakes, but I will be a happy camper.
a garter snake got into our garage, so I'm like waiting for it to come by
Find its
with
way
me.
out.
Which, yes, yes, as long as it doesn't wrap itself around my ankle, which has happened before. I must have I must have great blood for them to wrap themselves around my
Nice and warm and cuddly.
warm. I'm a cuddly.
I do miss rat snakes and black snakes because in Florida, they would keep you safe. They ate all the poisonous snakes. They were very
Oh,
handy to have.
yeah,
But yeah. Mhm.
yeah. So at some point, I'd really love for you to, as the plants sort of take over and get bigger, I think you should talk about this. This was my grief therapy, and
Right.
share it. Yeah,
And the birds. I brought my mom loved birds, the wild birds, and we live on a hillside. We're surrounded by some open space, which is disappearing, but it's still some of it still opens. We have a lot of birds. And so she had a ton of bird feeders. And I did my best to keep them filled for her. And it was hard with all of the scheduling and whatnot, but they have all moved over to my yard. And we are now going through 40 to 50 pounds of bird seed per
yeah,
week.
yeah,
And it's delightful, expensive, but delightful. That is my other form of grief therapy is we can sit in the yard and watch all of the birds and enjoy them and the hummers and whatnot. And
yeah.
they like my plants too. It's a synergistic kind of a thing,
Yes, yes,
right?
yeah,
So I'm good with that, and I will take pictures and share them as the plants get bigger. But the tomatoes in my box garden are now much taller than I am, so
wow,
it's going
wow.
to be a fun summer. I hope,
We're
unless
just
we go to
planting.
right heat, and then everything will frizzle up and die.
I know, I know. Yeah, we have all sorts of. I haven't gotten to my raised beds yet. Daryl has planted flowers and also lamented. Uh, they ate my plants, my impatience, and I go. It wasn't a deer. It groundhog. So, and not groundhogs. Was
Squirrels?
either no a beaver or a prairie dog. Prairie dogs are
Oh my
pretty big.
gosh, you have such cute creatures. I
Yeah,
have
we
rats and
do.
mice eating my plants.
No, 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 no. We don't have. I mean, they don't. This and this was far up, and he goes, "How tall are they?" I said, "Have you not looked at the size when they stand on their hind legs. I mean, they're
You
like
need to take a
3 feet
picture.
tall.
Those of us who live far from that love to see that stuff.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I couldn't tell by its tail because beavers are a little bit the same to me. And we have beavers back in the creek. So yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah,
don't have a creek. We've got a hill.
yeah, you do. You
And
have
we obviously do not
wildfire.
have, we had a hawk who lived in our over our backyard, and that took care of my
Ooh.
plants the last several years that I had a garden. But I didn't have a garden the last several years, so he must have moved on. And now
Yeah,
things are being eaten. So yeah,
yes.
that's okay. I can grieve it, I can live with it, and I can laugh as I make our backyard, our patio, absolutely unusable as the summer winds on, because we'll have
I
zucchinis.
love that. And
Yes.
it's almost like a metaphor. You know, grief sort of spreads out. And sometimes it I'll tell you about this week. I think I may have said last yeah, Wednesday or Thursday was I was texting back and forth to two separate families, both having to take loved ones off on life support.
Mhm.
And so this week was the funeral for the young man that died. And, at first, grief just stays in a ball.
Mhm.
It's, you see it play out. It's really tight. And then when something relaxes, I'm not sure what, it grows out
Mhm.
and it gets bigger before it settles down,
Mhm.
and the waves of grief don't hit you as fast and as furious, and it feels furious. So I'm thinking
Like a
about you.
firecracker, and then you see all the little things twinkling down, and the leftovers. Mhm.
And you very well may have many firecrackers.
Yes,
People forget that. They think one and done, and it does not work that way.
it doesn't. The person I was just talking to is like, well, there was a birthday right after the loss, and then Mother's Day. Now Father's Day is coming. Some people celebrate 4th of July. Memorial Day may be something, especially if they've lost a loved one in war. There's Veterans Day, because this person was, in fact, a veteran. There's holidays. There's Halloween is now overtaking Christmas for lots of families in terms of celebratory. And so that creates, there's so many places,
There's so
right?
many
And there's so many ways to find ways to cope with it.
so many
Yeah.
firecrackers, and they're all hidden even when you plan for something. You
Hmm.
know, I sort of a loose train of thought here, but another thing I talk about is cellular memory. And
Hmm.
cellular memory is there is this whole theory and concept that memories are stored in your muscles, in the cells in your muscles.
Hmm.
And when an anniversary date or some other kind of whatever it is, maybe olfactory, you smell something that
Hmm.
reminds you of your loved one. And it could be a long time far in a universe far, far ago, you know, it brings you right up to that time. And that's sort of like you go, I have no idea why I just started crying in the middle of the produce aisle. And then you tell them, did your mom,
Hmm.
what was her favorite fruit, or your dad, or what's a memory? And did you smell that? And he goes, yeah,
There you go.
there you
Grocery
go.
stores are infamous for bringing on emotions after someone dies,
Right, right.
because you can't get away from food. Food is a necessity for life, and food brings back memories. And the other people shop there, and so then you end up with people who know you've had a loss, and then they need to bring it up. And grocery stores are Instacart is the savior of grievers,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Because
yes,
you don't have to go near that store,
that's right.
right? I had to run to the store last weekend for something that I think food for the dogs or something. Anyway, and I had managed to avoid it all week. I could not push my cart through the store for all the flowers shoved in between every nook and cranny.
Right.
And I finally looked at the manager and I said, "Is this entirely necessary? We don't have that many shoppers in this side of town. What are you trying to make life harder? Right? Stop it." Oh my
Oh,
God, it was just overwhelming the amount of Mother's Day schlock. And
oh,
I love
I
my mom and I did Mother's Day, but this was incredible.
I
Boxes.
stayed off of Facebook. It was just a really rough Mother's Day for
Mhm,
whatever reason. Um,
mhm.
on the flip side, I met up with someone I hadn't talked to in a long time, and he used to work in grocery stores and some specialty stores. And there was this one woman who I started taking care of her mother in the 80s. Okay. And her mother was 92, 93. And my friend, I stayed friends with her. She was 78. She died when she was almost 104. Okay. She was notorious for being a difficult shopper and difficult client. Notorious when she'd walk into a grocery store because she was so specific and wanted things her way, immaculately. Everybody on the floor who would normally take care of stuff would scatter.
Right.
And so he was recounting some things. And in that moment, my stomach sort of clenched up because once she discovered the carts that you could ride, my fear factor of her hitting someone because she couldn't drive and so I'm laughing and my stomach is clenching, remembering those days of her in these carts that you could drive and mow down people. I was, isn't
Oh,
that
100%.
interesting? I hadn't
Yeah.
had that feeling since I'd been with her in a store.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was so interesting.
I had a hospice family once, and he kept insisting on taking his wife to the grocery store instead of leaving her at home with the caregiver that they had. And he could not push the buggy and push the spouse at the same time. He put her on the cart, but the cart's controls were the opposite of the one she had at home, and it was Super Bowl, and they had put up these giant stacks of
No!
cans to make like that, and
Yes.
potato chip things across the top to make like a goal, and she wiped it out. And then he did it again at Thanksgiving, and she took down the turkey made out of boxes of stuffing. And it's like, at some point, we're going to learn this, or the store is going to see her coming and lock the door.
Oh
But
no.
they were an adorable couple, but it is a funny memory of them because you can have the funny memories even in the loss. And yes, folks, hospice teams do remember their patients. Yes, we do.
Yes. Oh,
Your families make an impression on us, and we carry them with us, and we
yes,
carry their
we
memories
do.
and the lessons that they teach us.
Absolutely. I
And that's something to remember, because even in those moments, your loved one has left an impression on people who've only known them for a brief part of their life, right? Hmm.
absolutely, hospice people, I'd say 9 out of 10 because there's always one that just is like whatever.
Right.
But it really we those of us who are in the death and dying profession
Mm-hmm.
always open our heart, and in some ways we let ourselves get like dented cans.
Yes,
Things
we
run
do.
into us just a little bit, and then we heal and have to move on. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really, I'm not going to say it takes special people, but it does take a certain amount of capacity of our spirit,
Mm-hmm. I would
and
agree with that. I think it's like any profession. There are people who are that profession, and for hospice and other people who work at end of life,
yes.
there's a definite approach to life,
Hmm.
and there's a lack of fear that other folks experience, and
Yeah,
there's an ability to reach out within that community, that tight knit community, find support, which makes it
yes,
possible to keep going. And I do love that about the hospice world, but it's like that in any kind of nursing or
right.
CPS or police, and everybody has their little beloved community that
Yeah.
becomes part of those.
Ah, and Steve said, but those people are special.
So they
And
are, and I'm very grateful for them. And I'm grateful that I got to be part of them, and I know Deb is too.
yeah,
Yeah, and still
life
are.
lessons, difficult at times, and yet, uh,
Life
you
altering in a very good way.
when you exercise any muscle, it gets stronger. And thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
And your heart gets stronger to
Hmm.
to to be able to encompass that and see a bigger picture of grief,
Right.
death, of life.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a gift.
it is.
Mhm.
So, Jill,
Next week,
next week, same time, same station.
same time, same place, and I'll be in a new decade. Yay!
You
Here we
will.
come.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh, no way.
Yeah, I get a new
Wow.
decade. I'll wear my
That is
crown.
definitely wear a crown.
I have one. I'm going to put it on Tuesday. Yes,
Oh,
I am.
good.
I'm going to wear it everywhere and shame and embarrass everyone who's with me.
I hope
My
so.
family's going, "Oh my God, you're really going to do that?"
I
Uh,
love
You
it.
know what? When people have died in your life, you have to celebrate that you get to the next year.
That's
That is
right.
part of the
That's
lesson,
right.
right? Yes,
Right.
Steve, I'm joining the club.
Yes. Welcome to the club. Welcome
Right?
to the 60s. You can play that from Good Morning Baltimore.
Yes,
Yes, that's where that's
absolutely.
from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
boomers are turning 60 this year. We got to love it. The last of the boomers.
The last of the boomers. Steve
Hmm.
and I have made our dent
You
already.
have led the way, and I'm bringing up the
The rear.
call me the caboose. Here I come.
You are. I love it. Dear
So
Caboose.
the caboose and Deb will be here next week. Same bat channel, same time. And if you're listening to this after the fact on the podcast, we welcome you. We do have a few guests that will be joining us in the future. We're working on one right now who's working on a graduate program. And as soon as her IRB, the human subject research group gives her permission to come on, she's going to come on and talk about her research. And we've got a children's book author we're working on, and some other folks. And if you have other folks that you'd like us to include, we'll be happy to do that. I also have a retired judge who's agreed to come and join us, so
Oh,
to
that's
share his
great. That's
perspective on
great.
grief. So we're at it again. All right,
All
see
right.
you later, everybody.
Happy birthday
Bye.
in between, Jill.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.